BeachShop.com. I just came back from my 30-minute beach body class at Crunch this morning. Now I'm down in Yardley Barrow, right by the canal, which is behind me, and I'm getting my hair cut at Pure Eco Wellness Salon. It's this place. I'm actually a little early, but I'm not going to film inside because it is a private business and they may not really appreciate that, or the customers. But when I get back today, I'm going to show you how to make cream puff swans, which are really good, very easy to make. So I will see you then. And here we go. We're going to make swan cream puffs filled with a whipped chocolate ganache and topped with whipped cream. Sounds really good. It is really good. And you know, they're really not difficult to make. A lot of people see the pictures of them and they look like they're complicated, but they're not. And it doesn't take a whole lot of ingredients to make this. What I have is water. I have some whole wheat pastry flour, but you can use all-purpose flour. I have some unsweetened, unsalted butter. I have a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, and I have some confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar or icing sugar, depending on where you're from, that we're going to use to dust the top. To make the bodies, you're going to need 2 pastry bags. One of them has a large star tip, and this is an Ateco 369, I believe. And this one's a Wilton round tube number 5. I will be posting this on my blog, which tips you'll need. So gather up your supplies and come on right back because you just don't want to miss this. No, you don't. The dough that we use to make swan cream puffs, or any kind of cream puffs, is called a pâté chaud. And to make it, we're going to just add the water, the sugar, the salt, and then the butter. And we're going to let it come to a boil and boil it for a few seconds. And once it comes to a boil, we're going to remove it from the heat. And we're going to sift in the flour. With a wooden spoon, we're going to mix the flour into the liquid. And it's going to thicken up very, very fast, as you can see. And once it's incorporated in, I'm going to put it back on high and let this cook for about another minute. We're now going to pour the batter into a separate bowl, and we're going to let it sit for 15 minutes to cool off a little bit till it's lukewarm. While we're waiting for the dough to cool, I'm just going to slightly beat the eggs. When the dough reaches a lukewarm stage, we're going to slowly incorporate the eggs and mix this well in with a wooden spoon. And you want to do this slowly because you don't want the eggs to cook. So you just want to add a little bit at a time. This may take some time to do this because we're not using a mixer. We're doing this all by hand. It's going to be a little bit of an arm workout for you today. Once the egg is completely incorporated, your dough is going to look, well, just like this. Now I'm going to go fill up the pastry bags. I'm going to put some dough in both bags, and you're going to need to have 2 baking sheets with silicone liners, or you can use parchment paper if you don't have the silicone liners. And I'm going to preheat the oven to 450 degrees. To make the swan bodies with this large star tip, I'm just going to squeeze it almost like I would do a shell border and then just pull away. and keep them about an inch apart. With a little bit of the powdered sugar, I'm just going to go over each swan body with the dusting. And then I'm going to put these in the oven at 450 degrees for 5 minutes. And then after 5 minutes, I'm going to turn the temperature down to 350 degrees for 25 minutes. Now, it's very important that during the baking time, you don't open the oven door. These types of pastries really want to puff up. And if you open the door, you're going to let the steam out, and you just may not have what you're looking for. So just keep the oven door closed, and don't forget to turn the oven temperature down from 450 to 350. While these are baking, I'm going to show you how to make the swan's neck. While the swan's bodies are baking, I'm going to go ahead and start on making the neck. And what we're going to do is have a very thin S shape going around and then coming back, just like a swan's neck would be. And then to make the face, I'm going to put the pastry bag back at the top, squeeze a little circle out, and just pull out like that. And you notice we have a face. And you want to make extras of these. You know, if you have a dozen bodies, you want to make sure you have a few extra necks, because they will break. They're not very, they're kind of thin, and they will break. Now I hope you can see how I'm doing this. The batter just happens to be the same color as the mat that I'm using, and I tried to zoom in as much as I can, but I film all my videos using a GoPro, and there is no zoom lens on this camera. So here again, I'm going to squeeze some out and just pull out, and I have a face. And then when we're done doing this, I'm going to bake these in a 350 degree oven for about 12 minutes. And you want to keep an eye on these. Don't go away from the oven, because if you keep them in a minute longer, they'll burn. Now, one of the first steps before making the Swan Cream Puffs would be to make the chocolate ganache filling. And you can make this up to a day before. It'll thicken in the refrigerator. Or if you don't want to wait that long, you could make it maybe 3-4 hours before you're ready to fill the cream puffs. And all I'm going to do is take a cup of heavy whipping cream, and I'm going to let this come to a boil. Okay, as the cream comes to a boil, I'm going to remove it from the heat, and I'm just going to pour it into a bowl of 4 ounces of chopped up semi-sweet chocolate. And I'm going to let it sit there for about a minute so that the heat can penetrate into the chocolate. It'll be a lot easier to melt. And after a minute, you should be able to whip this, and just keep whipping it and whipping it. And as it cools down, it will start to emulsify. I finished mixing together the heavy cream and the chocolate. It's melted. I'm going to refrigerate this for 1 hour to cool it. Then I'm going to beat it together in my mix master. Now I have the chocolate ganache, and you see how it's still liquidy, but it's cool, and because there's so much heavy cream in here, we're going to whip it up, and it should whip up to a nice thick, almost a mousse-like consistency. And I'm just going to have it beat with the beater attachment on my KitchenAid until it comes to a thick, so it's thick enough where I can put this in a pastry bag and fill those swans. So this is what your chocolate ganache should look like when it's whipped. See how stiff this is? So if it's not coming up this stiff, then refrigerate it for a little longer, and then try whipping it again. Usually when cream is involved, if it's not absolutely cold, it doesn't whip very well. Now I'm going to make the whipped cream that's going to go on top of the chocolate ganache, and we're going to make a stabilized whipped cream. And what that means is that our whipped cream will not turn to liquid in a day or so. where normally if you just whip up cream and add some sugar to it, it looks great for several hours, but then the next day it turns back into liquid. You would have to re-whip it. This way, we're not going to have to do that. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take a teaspoon of unflavored gelatin, 4 teaspoons of water. I'm going to mix it together over a small pan, and then I'm going to heat it up over a low heat just until the gelatin dissolves, and then I'm going to move it off to the side to let it cool. Now while I'm waiting for the gelatin to cool a little bit, and it really shouldn't be that hot because I had it on low, I'm going to mix in a cup of, in my KitchenAid, I'm going to mix 1 cup of very cold, heavy whipping cream. And you really want this very cold because if it's at room temperature or degree, it will not whip very well. I also have about 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. You can use more or less depending on how sweet you want this. And I'm going to mix this with the beater blade of my mixer until stiff peaks start to form. And then, but before that, I'm going to gradually add in the gelatin, and then I'm going to beat this. Once stiff peaks form, I'm going to turn this off. You don't want to overmix this or else you're going to have butter. And I'm pouring the gelatin in a little bit at a time as this starts to whip up. Now here I have my nice thick stabilized whipped cream, and if you didn't want to go the trouble of making this yourself, you could always buy the ready whip in the store. It'll save you a lot of time, but I really do like it best when I make it myself. I can adjust the sweetness, and as I said, this is a stabilized whipped cream. You do have to keep this refrigerated, so I'm going to put this in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it. Here's the swan bodies, and when they're completely cool, we're going to cut them, and we're going to take a paring knife. We're going to hold each body lengthwise and just cut the top off. And you'll notice the inside is hollow, which makes it ideal to put a filling in. So I have the swan body. Here's the top, and I'm going to cut the top lengthwise in half again. I'm just going to put that right there. And when you're done cutting the tops off, I'm then going to take some powdered sugar and just dust it over each wing. And I'm going to heavily dust it. So here I have my chocolate ganache in a pastry bag with a small tube tip number 5. I have my whipped cream, my stabilized whipped cream in a star tube. I have my swan faces, the wings, and I have the bodies. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to using the ganache, I'm going to just fill in the cream in the body. Not too much, you don't want it to overpower. Just going to squirt some in each body. Okay. And then we're going to just, with the star tube, the whipped cream, I'm just going to put some star decorations around the swan. They're all filled with the whipped cream, so I'm going to take each half of the tops, just put one on each side, like that, and then with one of the swan heads, just plant it in the whipped cream. Same with the other ones. So again, just take this swan, put one wing on one side, one wing on the other, and a head in the center, and just push them down a little bit, and there you have your swan. Aren't they cute? So easy to make, a lot of fun to make, honestly too good to eat to make. So, but they are very good, and I'm going to take one from this tray and just eat the head first. And they really are very good, very easy to make. Don't forget, make sure you go to cinnamonsweetshoppe.com, where I will have all of the ingredients listed and some extra notes that I may not have mentioned in the video. And for other recipes, cake and cookie decorating techniques, tutorials, please also go to cinnamonsweetshoppe.com and subscribe to this YouTube channel.